Well, all right, friends. Here it is. A very, very chilly day in North Jersey. We had, I guess, a bit of snow yesterday. Nothing to write home about, but some. Yeah, it's snowy out there. Fed the birds, the little critters out there, the little birds especially. Break up crackers and cereal that I can get on sale at the supermarket, where I work, and throw it out to them. Oh, they're very appreciative. It's a chilly day. Not too bad in the house. We got it going all right. But I was thinking. Yeah, I know you smelled something burning. I know. Well, I was though. I thought it might be fun to do a story about boilers. Yeah, I used to work around them. Yeah, the real big ones, and it might make for it might warm the, as Lum and Abner used to say it might warm the crockery of your heart. Right. On such a chilly season. So far, pretty darn cold for winter. Okay, so this one's called A Darn Big Boiler. It's one of the blurps I wrote. So I'll read it to you as best I can. Okay, here we go. As I look back and think about some of my most favorite jobs, I have to say that I really enjoyed working around boilers. I'm talking about the big industrial boilers that provide massive amounts of steam for heat and work. The Some of these boilers were as big as semis. Heck, some were as big as 10-story buildings. They were. Oh my, new and welded or old and riveted. If they made a good head of steam, boy, they fascinated me. I mean, really, if I had the money, I'd collect them. Yeah, take, take a mighty big building to do that. I just loved being in or around them. A day lugging boiler tubes down into a dusty basement and getting covered in soot and sweat was just a fine day to me. A round or two of ice cold beers afterwards was, well, just icing on a wonderful cake. Never really did like Boilermakers. Yeah, I mean the drink. No, the beer. Oh, yeah, those Pennsylvania bars sure kept it cold too. Yes, but you know something, I was afraid of boilers as a kid. The asbestos covered boiler in my grandparents' dimly lit basement looked kind of like a giant white octopus to me. The fire glow shining through the firebox door seemed to be more like a mouth that led to a belly full of fire. A fire just waiting for an unsuspecting morsel like me. Actually, it almost did have the boiler almost looked like a big white skull with a fiery mouth. And I did, and with the big long asbestos covered pipes, honestly, it did look like an octopus. And you kept thinking, in my nightmares, I kept thinking the darn thing is going to just, and that's it. All they'll find is my shoes, my PF Flyers. Yeah, a fire just waiting for an unsuspecting morsel. Yeah, how do you like it? I consider myself a morsel. I know one day I had to go down to the basement to get a can of beans for Grandma. The boiler was off, and I figured it'd be safe to sneak past it. I tiptoed by the firebox door and got to the can cupboard. I turned around and was almost past the sleeping monster when all of a sudden its burner motor came on. Grandma upstairs had probably turned on the hot water spigot in the kitchen. I stood frozen in terror right in front of the firebox door. Yeah, I was mesmerized. I couldn't. My feet were like lead. Frozen in terror right in front of the firebox door as the motor awakened and growled. I couldn't move. The fire ignited inside the firebox, and a downdraft from the chimney blew smoke out its fire door vents. There was this whoosh and thump as the fire inside ignited and more smoke belched out of the vent holes. Oh, for me it was feet do your stuff time as I turned and ran up the rickety steps. I ran up pretty darn fast for a 5-year-old. I think I did the stairway in 2 steps as I screamed that the boiler was going to blow up. As usual, upstairs, no one paid me any mind. It seemed that every time I went to the basement, I always came up the steps screaming the same thing. After about 20 trips, well, let's just say that I know how the boy who cried wolf felt. By the way, Grandma got me the kids' book version of that story. Insisted I read it a few times. She handed me the book again this particular day and told me to go read it in the sunroom. Then she went down to down to the basement to get the can of beans I dropped. Oh man, the poor grandma. The years passed, and believe it or not, I learned about boilers. Yeah, here's how it happened. I was a custodian at a school, and they offered me free tuition and a bit of pay to go take a boiler operator's license course. Passing the course would get me a New Jersey Black Seal license, and oh yeah, you got to be licensed to operate a boiler, and a bit of a raise. Heck, why wouldn't I go? Yeah, free coffee. Uh, there was this great teacher for the course, and he taught us quite a bit. I think his name was Mr. Buhot. No, really, Buhot. He taught us to watch what to watch out for, what to do when the boiler was in a jam. Darned if he didn't make it fun somehow. He was like a game show host. He was really a very good speaker. Our school boiler was just a tea kettle compared to some of the boilers online elsewhere. Mr. Buhot spoke of boilers that were the size of houses and even bigger. He warned of the dangers that a boiler could face, but he also spoke of the great work they could do all over this great big wonderful world. You know, moving ships and factories, keeping electricity going. I don't know, but I guess I joined the Boiler Lovers Club. I imagine it pays to keep in mind that if there is something you're uneasy about, it wouldn't hurt to study it. Study on it. I guess that just makes sense. You'll like this. One day, many years after my first day in Mr. Buhot's course, by then I was a boiler consultant, I found myself checking out the water treatment system in the biggest boiler I had ever known. This one was at least 80 feet high. I am not kidding, 80 feet high, and sat in a building the size of half a football field. It was a far cry from Grandma's basement, that's all I can say. This boiler provided steam for tobacco curing and the cigarette manufacturing process. When it ran, the ground vibrated, but it wasn't that noisy. Massive pumps provided water and fuel. They made most of the racket, truth be known. Air blowers provided a hurricane of air for the firebox. The firebox alone, where the fire was inside this thing, was the size of a house. Yeah, you don't even want to know what the fuel bill was. No. Trust me, it was a heart stopper. When the bill arrived in the mail, paramedics were on standby right outside the accounts payable office. They were often needed. Stat. Yeah, the boiler's water to steam assembly consisted of huge drums at various levels and locations. Hundreds of curved boiler tubes, maybe thousands of curved boiler tubes, ran between the various massive drums. Some drums held water that was going to be boiled. Some drums held steam. Some collected mud and sludge from the water. There were so many pipes and drums that I'm sure no one knew just where they all were or what they all did. It was that complicated a device. Yeah, just to boil water and make steam. I know, but pretty complicated. The day I chose to visit this boiler room, the production line was down, so the boiler was running just to stay hot. Its usual outflow of steam wasn't needed. I stood at the front of the eighth wonder of the world with the chief operator. We were both just admiring the view. I asked the chief if he ever had any scary moments with this baby of his. He said, nope, nothing's ever happened. We keep our fingers crossed real tight. So far, so good. But boy, if something did go wrong, it sure wouldn't be. Oh, wait a minute, friends. Gotta get my computer. Well, sure wouldn't be pretty. We'd probably take out the town. Of course, we wouldn't know about it. You know, you can't outrun steam. He's right. The boiler just hummed along as we stood there. I knew they were down, but hot till the production line came back on. You know, so steam could come like that. Still, I had to ask, so, Chief, what are you using the steam for? Anything? Are you using it for anything just now? The chief said, yes, they were. And if I wanted to see what they were doing with all this power, I should just go take a look at the rear lower mud drum around the back of the boiler. I took the walk, actually it's more of a hike to get there, and passed whirling fuel pumps, watered pumps, hissing fuel lines and gas lines, and could feel the floor vibrating under my feet. You could feel the heat coming off this thing. When I got to the rear mud drum, which was down at ground level, I smiled. The mud drum sticks out about 6 inches to a foot. out the edge of the boiler. It gets pretty hot. Sludge is in there. Yeah. And mud. There on the drum, one of the crew, here's what they were doing. Yeah. All that power, all that fuel, there on the drum, one of the crew was heating a vented can of beans. That's it. A can of beans. I got to admit, though, they smelled pretty good. Anyway, there you go, friends. To warm you up on a nice chilly day, a good old boiler story. I got more. Oh, yeah, don't you worry about that. Okay, well, here, let's get going. I'll see you later. Got to go check the thermostat. Maybe boil some water for tea.